Well, howdy, guys. Welcome back to the RedAss podcast. It is Monday, February 19th, and if I sound a little rough, it has been a little rough. It's been an interesting couple of weeks on both of our fronts here, but I'm Rob White, fighting Texas Aggie class of 14.
Yeah, and this is Roy May, fighting Texas Aggie class of 2015. And it has
Yeah,
been, yeah, I mean, we've been so busy that we missed. But there's been plenty of action that we can certainly get to. And I think, the weather's turning and maybe Puxatawny Phil was correct. But I'm betting that we still get the one last cold snap out of the state of Texas. So in my prep to, I'm in a battle with the weeds in my yard right now.
yeah.
Um, and I'm like this close to just napalming my yard. Um, but so I'm gonna resod and reseed, but I'm betting on a cold snap, so I'm kind of waiting to do that right now. But yeah, spring is in the air, which means the diamonds are full.
The diamonds are quite full, and we will definitely jump into plenty of baseball and softball action because there's plenty of good things to talk about. My last week, just to give you guys a little perspective, I was nearly in a head-on collision outside of Austin on Monday and had a gun pulled on me on Villa Maria Drive on Wednesdays, or excuse me, Thursday. So to call it an interesting week would be an understatement on that front, but uh, I'm still here. We're both still here, and that's the important thing.
Okay, so you have to dive into the gun story.
I have to.
Were you in the car or were you like walking on Villa Maria?
Yeah, no, I was in my car. So right now, if you're driving in town over there in Bryan, right before you get to the turnoff over at College Avenue, they currently have it down to one lane because they're working on the power lines. And I was cruising up on the light down to one lane, and it opened up, so I scooted over to the right lane, and a vehicle at the very, very last second in front of me decided they wanted to be in that lane and started going over as I'm already on their side. So you're going to turn into me. So I honked, like, come on, guy, pay attention. I pull up and I'm hearing yelling outside the car the whole time. I'm just focusing straight forward, got my sunglasses on. And I look over and I see this guy. He's leaning out of the window, tapping a 9mm on the door. Well, I turn back around, look at the light. It's turned green. I turn right. Well, he gooses to get right behind me. And all of a sudden, okay, he's chasing me a little bit, lane by lane. It's like, that's a little nerve wracking. But I get to the one light right before you're heading into College Station and was able to wedge myself between another car and put him kind of catty corner behind. We move through the light. I take a left on Rosemary and he keeps going straight. I made a phone call explaining the situation to the fine CSPD and haven't heard anything back on that. So figured that was going to be a long stretch anyway. But yeah, people are crazy out there right now. So
I I'll
that's
tell
the
you
last
what.
time I'm driving around without a pistol in my car. I'll tell you that much.
Well, well, one gun gets pulled, a second gun gets pulled, and generally nothing good comes of that. But
No,
I will say, when I was driving on Saturday, because I had to drive the Nacogdoches for some business, and then I drove back. That's almost 2.5 hours each way,
yeah,
and then I drove down to Tomball to have lunch with my family or dinner with my family. So all in all, 7 hours worth of driving on Saturday. Some of the most insane driving I have ever seen all weekend long. And it
yeah,
was literally the whole time. And it ranged the gamut. Like it was across the spectrum. On my way back, I get stuck behind a dude. So it's double yellow. So I got nowhere to go. And
right.
driving between here and Nacogdoches, they're not all, 8-lane roads. We're going 52 and a 70 for miles and miles. Um,
Yeah.
on the way, like people, like I had a motorcycle, like white lining. You went up past two cars on the shoulder in a motorcycle. And I'm not talking a Harley. I'm talking just a little kind of piece of crap motorcycle that if he hit anything in that median, he was gone, like gone. Because we were going 70, 75 miles an hour and he just blew past us on the shoulder. Had a had a Mustang. It was like a merge situation as well. And he was two cars behind me on Highway 6 and he gunned it on the right um and passed both of us and like almost clipped me coming. It was absolutely nuts this weekend and it wasn't a full moon. So I don't know what was going on, but it was bonkers on the roads.
No, you're not kidding. And following up with my Monday incident, so I was heading out to Dripping Springs. We went and recorded 2 new songs. I'll get into all that here in a bit. Two really exciting songs that I'm pumped for. But as I was heading out, it's kind of similar to Highway 21 as you're in between Caldwell and Bastrop, where it's
Mhm.
4 lane, but it's just the double yellow in the middle, no median really. So
Right.
anybody can just fly over a lane, right? Well, that happened. I was heading out that direction, and a car in front of me jumps over far right. I'm in the left lane, and all of a sudden I'm face to face, 200 feet in front of me with a Ford F-150. And for those who don't know me, I drive a little GMC Canyon, which it's a nice little truck, but it's not as big as an F-150.
But it's a
So
little truck.
it's a little truck. So facing down an F-150, 200 feet in front of me, and I had nowhere to go. So definitely had a flash before my eyes moment where I was like, well, guys, it's been great. I hope you've enjoyed the podcast. I guess we'll catch y'all on the flip side. I'll be sure to put in a good word for you with God, that kind of deal. Well, he ends up scooting over right back where he was supposed to be at the very, very last second. We kissed paint. It was so close.
Ugh.
Yeah, so couple of close calls this week, but you know what? We're doing okay. I'm excited
Made
to
it through
be
it.
here. Yes. So I figured we could probably jump in at least touch on basketball first before we get into the diamonds.
Yeah, this team is really really frustrating. I saw on Twitter or X, I believe it was earlier today. There's only like 2 or 3 other teams in college basketball that have as many quad one wins as we do,
Right.
but our quad three losses are absolutely killing us.
No, it's pure
Like,
insanity. It's weird. It's a very Jekyll and Hyde team that we've come to, yeah, that we've come to really appreciate with this Aggie baseball team or with this Aggie basketball team. I mean, they're back and forth when they get on the road for whatever reason. They're just not pulling it together.
yeah, well, I mean, you hit the nail on the head with the Jekyll and Hyde stuff. It's one of those 1 step forward, 2 steps back kind of thing, and that's what we're seeing this season. Like great win, terrible loss,
Yeah,
great win, terrible loss, and it's the whole. I mean, we're at the point now where you can really peg kind of who this team is, and it's just an inconsistent basketball team.
sure.
You know, they have the ability to beat anybody, and they have the ability to lay an absolute clunker.
Yeah,
Now, when you go out and let a college team score 100 points, the likelihood of you winning in regulation, at least, the
yeah,
likelihood of you pulling out that game is incredibly low. And I understand that Alabama made a ton of threes, but still, we also, we've harped on this. And I know that the idea is make them kill you with threes. Well, if they start killing you with threes, though, like you've got to do something to mediate the damage or minimize the damage, that's going on from beyond the arc.
yeah.
And so, but I mean, Alabama, they spread the scoring around. It wasn't like we just had one guy beating the pants off us. I mean, they spread the scoring around. It was just, I mean, you put up 75 points, you expect to win, honestly, in a college basketball game. I mean, 75 is kind of a number where if you're hitting that, if you hit that, you feel pretty good about your chances, and you hit 75 and got your doors blown off.
Yeah, full credit to Alabama for what they were able to accomplish in that game. But between that one and Vanderbilt loss right after you go and take down Tennessee at home,
I'll tell you,
between those two
Vanderbilt,
instances, it's
yeah,
kind of rough.
that Vandy loss was just, and I mean, I get that the dude made a ridiculous play at the end, but again, like it shouldn't come to that,
No,
and so and that's two, what is that? That's 2 cases this year where on the final possession, they take the ball down and score.
yep,
That's two buzzer beaters in a season. Um, so yeah, this team doesn't have enough consistency to do anything in the tournament if they make the tournament, and that's a big if right now.
it
Quite
is.
frankly, it's a big if. So when you have and Olin, in his kind of write up of the game afterwards, he mentioned it. This is only like the third time I think that they've lost when Boots has gone over 20 or 20 some odd points. And so, everything again, we hit 75 points. Everything we did is, kind of the check marks, checking the boxes for when we're successful. These are the things we do, and we did them. But Wade Taylor just had a terrible game.
Yeah, and that was something that you and I talked about. It's very much Boots and Wade, and how the team goes depends on how those two are doing. And yeah, one of them does well, but if the other one's having a bad day, it doesn't pan out. And defensively, giving up 100 points is just inexcusable in regulation. You just can't do that.
Yeah, that's we'll call it tough.
Tough. That's a good word for it.
But on the flip side, the women look, we were talking, we've kind of harped on this all year long. And I think we talked about it a little, offline as well. It's, we're seeing that improvement in the women's, in the women's program, and seeing Joni Taylor getting picked to be an assistant for the Olympics, that there's nothing but positive that you can take from that.
Yeah.
Because that's just yet another thing that she's able to put on her resume as she recruits as well.
Oh, yeah.
All this stuff ties back in. Like, I was an assistant on the Olympic team. Okay. So obviously, and she's had what was it, U19s or U21s, whatever it was, U17s, I can't remember what it was.
The
So
younger
she's
teams.
got, she's got the international experience, but the Olympics is, I mean, that's it. That's the top tier.
Yeah, it's a big deal, and it's going to continue to grow. And the thing is, what we have coming up this week, you have a couple of opportunities at home for games to catch, and definitely support if you can. We're hosting LSU tonight, number 13 LSU, and that's going to be a big home game, and
Well,
then Arkansas after that.
yeah, and so that's a real big one, to be honest, because this is one of those where LSU is going to have a ton of fans at Reed. There'll be people coming down from Waco just because it's Kim Mulkey,
Yeah,
Skeletor. But so this is one where, I honestly, if you can make it out to Reed, like, I please get out to Reed, just so it doesn't feel like a home game for LSU, because LSU travels well, especially when they're as good as they are. I mean, they're 21-4, they're ranked top 15 in the country. She always has a good program going there. So if you can get to Reed, by all means, please get to Reed tonight.
yeah,
I'm actually going to try and make it. I'm still trying to move some stuff around, but if I can make it, I will be at Reed, absolutely.
yes,
And it's obviously it's a big game.
yeah,
Um, so I've liked what I've seen out of them. I do.
yeah.
You want to see continued success. I know they've kind of done a little bouncing around a little bit with consistency. Again, consistency on the hardwood, but I think that coming out of the women's program is, we're still at a level where it's acceptable to understand that, because they're still kind of building the program and kind of in her vision, and that takes time,
It does.
and I get it. It just takes time. But I think we've seen enough positives that we can be happy about it. But I'd love for people to get out to Reed, because honestly, it's going to be like a home game for LSU.
Exactly. So get out there and support if you can. That would be awesome. So basketball continues to roll on. Meanwhile, diamonds are definitely heating up, and I mean, I'll go ahead and just get us started with softball. The girls are
So
off to a 9-0 start, man.
no, they're 11-0, bro.
11-0. They didn't
Yeah,
update the website then.
they are 11-0. They beat number 14 Oregon twice this past weekend. Their schedule, they always, they generally always open up, because the softball, it starts with all the invitationals, right? I think baseball, you're starting to see more of those, but softball has been doing this for years. So they started off with an invitational here at home weekend before this past one.
Yeah.
And went undefeated, had a great weekend. But the competition is not necessarily, that one wasn't set up to where the competition was, a really stiff field. And then they went out west and they played better competition. You played a ranked team and you beat them twice. They are absolutely steamrolling. Emily Kennedy is just unbelievable in the circle. Not as much power maybe as we would like, because I think you understand, if you watch softball, the big teams, or the big programs, they bring power to it. But I mean, obviously they're gonna be incredibly balanced. But we've got some pop obviously in the bats.
Mhm.
But you love to see what Emily did in the circle. I mean, she came in and shut teams down, and Oregon is no slouch. And
No.
so you get a little bit better barometer of where this team is, when you step up the competition, obviously.
Yeah.
And so, coming back, coming back home for this next weekend is going to be it's going to be huge because they're just steamrolling. I mean, they're undefeated,
Yeah.
and so is Aggie baseball, but Aggie baseball's only played 3. So that Aggie softball has seen Tricia Ford's got her squad. They've seen plenty of different teams, which means you've seen plenty of different approaches to hitting, to pitching, and you've been able to win them all. So, and not that I'm going to sit here and say that Aggie softball is going to win them all, because obviously softball in the SEC is crazy. And that's one sport where with the SIPs and OU coming in, it gets even crazier because those are 2 of the best programs in the nation.
Yeah.
But you love to see it. It's what we talk about with with women's basketball as well. Learning to win is part of winning.
Right.
And feeling last year, look, they took in the teeth. It was tough. It was their first year, and it was admirable effort. But this year, like, they're off to a roaring start, and they're like, there's got to be a ton of confidence in that clubhouse right now.
Well, there's no doubt when you go on the road, to a different environment down there in California, and you do have ranked opponents that you're going to face. You take down Oregon twice, you take down the host twice, and those are tight games. But what you did do was you did a great job of controlling those games and winning them, and that's very, very important. Meanwhile, you're coming up on this upcoming invitational, the Texas A&M Invitational this weekend. And once again, you have another opportunity. Kansas coming into town, you get to face off against, some less than stellar competition again, but once again, learning how to win. That's the important thing. And getting that key experience for younger players, especially this early in the season, and getting that team gelled. I really like what I'm seeing so far, and I'm excited for them.
I mean, you're talking about 6 games in a weekend. So, you're rolling at that point. They're obviously full-fledged into their season, but maybe they are only 9-0. I might have that wrong. Whatever they are, they're undefeated. But
they're undefeated. So,
but so you've got a huge weekend with a ton of games. So a ton of potential for and what in the first weekend when they were home, what was that? That was the Aggie Classic. That's right.
right.
So the Aggie Classic, they were run ruling people, and when you're able to do that, we'll get into baseball because we saw a little bit of it. When your offensive production is fantastic, you know what that means? More kids get to play.
You're right. And
when games are more comfortable, these kids are getting playing time. So you're building you obviously have depth on your roster just based on how you set up your roster, but now you're having depth with experience, getting to play in these games. And so I think there's no way to tell this early in the season, what maybe they can be or can't be, but I think expectations can be incredibly lofty for this team.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm liking what I'm seeing early. From the highlights that I was able to catch later from softball, I really enjoyed what I saw. I'm excited for them. Definitely a great start, and it's not easy starting off the season with that kind of run. So just got to keep rolling.
Yeah, look, going undefeated, it doesn't matter the competition you're playing, especially when it's baseball and softball. The diamond sports they're just so unpredictable. They really are. And I think, we saw that. Us beating Oregon twice. That's on the West Coast. That's unpredictable in and of itself.
It's a big deal.
Emily Kennedy coming in and just shutting the door on them. In the second game.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm looking forward to it because they've got some experience. Like Julie Cottrell, obviously Emily Kennedy, Rylan Wiggins. You've got some experience on the team, and you've got some newer kids. And once you hit that balance, is when you start truly building your culture.
Yeah.
When you have the veteran leaders and you have the newer kids, everybody's buying in and everybody's pulling the rope in the same direction. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so I see it with both diamonds right now, with both clubhouses at A&M, and it is an absolute joy to watch.
Yeah, and definitely speaking of baseball, I did make it out to the game Saturday, which was great. Little cold, but
yeah.
But had a good time. I will say this, getting to see those boys. And yeah, Saturday was of the games, that was the one we struggled the most in. We didn't really start getting the bats going until about the 7th inning. But the one thing I will say above all else, and the most important thing to me that really caught my eye, yes, the runs were great. Yes, seeing these incredible exit velocities, these incredible distances that the home runs went. The most important thing to me was 2 things. One, the pitching and the fielding. We had 1 error on the whole weekend and 1 run that was given up and it was unearned.
Well, and what I think I saw was like 991 or something like that fielding percentage. I mean, just absolutely,
Phenomenal.
that's elite fielding.
Yeah.
And you're talking about how, unexpected things happen a lot, just because of the grind and just really just because how the sport is.
Yeah.
I think that Saturday game is a perfect example because look at Friday and look at Sunday.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we just outclassed them. But baseball and softball are such sports that the better team doesn't always win, and it happens a lot more often. I feel like in baseball and softball than it does other sports.
No, and you definitely saw that on multiple occasions just in the opening weekend, as we always do. You have, granted, we didn't get a chance for the Saturday and Sunday games with Florida, but they'll go and lose to St. Joe's game one and didn't get a chance to play the next two.
Yeah, four out of the top 10 teams in the rankings right now have lost.
Yeah, at least a game, right? And
And
so,
and there's no reason to move them anywhere in the rankings because if you go 2-1 in a weekend, like that's okay because that's baseball. I mean, you don't want to make that a habit against teams that you outclass, but man,
no.
sometimes it just happens.
But if you go 2-1 the entire season, that's generally good enough to win in the long run. That's just the way the baseball is.
Yeah, you just want to win series, and especially, I mean, when you're in your non-conference stuff, outside of these invitationals that they aren't series, they're just kind of round robin thing.
Yeah.
When you're in your non-conference, outside of maybe a special matchup the weekend that you have scheduled, you feel like when you're a program like A&M,
Mhm.
you feel like you should sweep them all. But the reality is that's just so hard to do. Now, obviously, it's a lot easier to rattle off a whole bunch of consecutive wins in college baseball as opposed to the pros because they're
Right.
obviously the distance and talent sometimes can be there can be a pretty wide gap as opposed to the MLB they're just all pros. The guys
Right.
are
And it's no different than football when you play against your, non-cons, lower play, lower teams, et cetera. Those are the games you should win, right?
right.
The games that you have set up to go out there and win. Well, you get a team like McNeese in because you need to win it. And they went out there and did exactly that.
And I thought the pitcher for McNeese on Saturday, so I got off the road in Nacogdoches. I caught the last about 3.5 innings, so I kind of caught it
Old,
when it
old
started.
Old Cameron.
Yeah, I thought he was pretty good.
He looked good and he held us off for a long while. But once he eventually got worn down and got into the bullpen, that's when the wheels came off. And generally that's
Well,
what you got to do.
and that's where you see that, and that's what elite teams do.
Yeah.
Look, that kid pitches at a college level. It pitches at a D1 college level.
Mhm.
These kids end up at major, top 10, top 15 programs sometimes when they transfer, and you're like, holy crap, this kid's amazing. Where was he playing?
Yeah.
That kind of kid. And what I saw now, I don't know if he was just literally pitching the game of his life or if that's the talent he is. And this is one of those things also. I'll follow McNeese State kind of from a distance. I'll just kind of keep an eye on their record,
Yeah.
who they play, because of where they are regionally. It wouldn't surprise me. I hadn't looked at McNeese State's schedule, but it wouldn't surprise me if they play LSU in non-conference, like
Yeah.
maybe even a Tuesday game. So just because of where they are, they may play some kind of bigger programs here regionally, and so it'll be interesting just to kind of keep an eye on them. And that's one of those things, and you do it, with every weekend that it stacks up. Your next. Your next weekend opponent, if you sweep them, you're going to keep an eye on them to see, if they end up playing anybody or do they win their conference, because there's so many more conferences in college baseball,
Right.
at the Division I level.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, I'll keep an eye on McNeese State just out of curiosity. I thought that pitcher on Saturday, I thought he was really good.
Well,
I mean,
speaking to McNeese's past, they have been a very solid team within their conference. They've won the conference tournament a couple times in the last several years, so that guaranteed them a spot in the tournament field. And they've won their conference outright in the regular season, I think, on 2 or 3 occasions. So this is
it's
a
the
team.
Southland Conference.
I think so.
Yeah,
And so they're a good baseball team for their region, for their size. So, at least in the past several seasons, anything could happen this year. It's so early, you have no idea. But they have looked good in the past. So that's a good confidence boost for what I like to see going forward. Now, kind of looking ahead to next week with Wagner, that is
that's
an
another
opponent.
one. You
Yeah,
expect to go 3-0.
that's a weekend you expect to go 3-0. They went on
Mhm.
the road to North Carolina and gave up double-digit runs every game.
Yeah.
So that's one of those teams you need to go out and beat the brakes off of because you can't.
Right. Yeah, you got what midweek Incarnate Word, you got Wagner, then
Yeah.
midweek Lamar, and then that first weekend in March is when we start playing some more talent. That's the thing up at Globe Life with Arizona State and USC.
Right.
Obviously not playing TCU, which I
Bummer.
think it's a bummer, but I absolutely love the logic behind it. Like, there's really no reason for us to like mess with ourselves given how we're ranked. And the reality is if both teams have the season they expect to have, they'll see each other.
No
You know,
doubt. And that's typically the way that things go, right? It's normally going to be a case of it'll get, the cards are going to fall where they're going to fall and we'll play who we play. And typically the way that they like to set it up, right, with
mm,
us being this SEC team, all right, well, you're in Texas. Let's take a big name out of Texas. Eeny, miny, mo, TCU, easy pick. And
yeah. I
they like that matchup for
well,
years.
and I think you love. I mean, there's a narrative behind it, obviously, with Schloss, coming from TCU. But I think the other part that you look at is, and this is kind of way too early prediction type stuff, right?
Yeah.
But TCU and A&M are the two teams out of the state of Texas that will be vying for a super.
Yeah, and in Texas may sneak in there too, but
I don't
I'm
know.
not as worried about them, at least at this stage of the game.
Yeah,
I
I'm
think
not sure about what's going on at Texas. Um, I mean, it's not breaking my heart that they lost.
no, but and it goes back to what we talked about, right? Teams are going to lose a game here
Right.
and there, and that was an extra inning and a situation where obviously I'm not sure if you watched how they lost, but they got doubled up.
Yeah, I got double.
Um,
Yeah, the brutal way to lose, by the
Right,
way.
because and if you're that runner, you're kind of in a tough spot because you're not sure if he caught it or not. It was so low to the ground. So I get it. It's one of those situations that's tough. I mean, we've been in situations like that. I know a lot of teams that have. So
Mm.
yeah, that stuff happens. So losing those type of games are not going to be a make or break for a team like Texas ever. But
But they went 2-1 on the weekend. They won the series.
they
Bounce
did,
back on Sunday. So it's again, good teams do that. Even if you have a hiccup, we've seen that here.
yeah,
Opening
no
weekend
doubt.
hiccups. We've certainly seen it.
No,
but
Lord knows. But
but man, there's so much potential with those young kids. It's so fun to watch them out there. But man, the violence is real.
I was just going to get into some stats on the weekend. So Jace goes 333 on the weekend, 3 home runs, and I mean just crushed him when he did get a hold of them.
How
But
many ribbies did he have? Was like 9 or something like that.
let's see.
I I mean that's
Yeah, nine RBIs in the first weekend.
that dude. That is bonkers. And I know that nobody keeps up. It's like if you you birdie the first hole, you're like, well, I mean, as I just birdie the rest of them, I'll be 18 under, right?
Yeah.
If I had a home run every game, I'll have 50 homers.
Well, and you're talking exit velocities pushing 114 miles an hour and 414 feet on a
That's
home run. Like,
yeah, 114 exit velocity is up there.
yeah, and you're talking about, and yeah, I get it. It's metal bats, it's the whole deal. But the deal is this team can hit, and this team,
Oh,
and when they are on, oh, it's a beautiful thing to
the
watch.
the offense is staggering.
Yeah,
It's just unbelievable. I outscored them like 30 something to 1 over a weekend.
yeah.
Um,
34 runs.
how fun is it watching Montgomery? That kid is special, and we saw he was special when we played him.
Yeah.
Um, he's fine. Grahovic is going to get it figured out.
Oh, heck,
Um,
he looked real good on Sunday.
man, I'll tell you what, the best part of all of it for me was turning it on Friday and watching Ryan Prager stand on the mound and just pump the strike zone.
I was about to say Ryan Prager. I feel so good for that kid because he's been on a long road to get where he's at right
Yeah.
now. And I mean, he pitched 5 absolutely stellar innings, ton of strikeouts. I mean, 9 Ks. I mean, good for the kid. I'm
Oh
happy.
well, I was laughing about it on the broadcast. I don't know if you caught the game at all, but on the SEC network, they were laughing about it because he was so efficient. I mean, what he had at one point was it 58 pitches, I think.
Yeah, it was real
Yeah,
low.
yeah, and so he went to the bullpen and threw the rest of his game.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
they like panned over and there's Prager up there and they're like, oh, maybe he's just tossing around. Like he was getting up on the rubber and burning it in. They're like, I have never seen that in my life because he pitched so efficiently. He didn't pitch the number of pitches he wanted to. And,
Right.
so- and maybe that's not him. Maybe that's maybe that's Max Weiner, the pitching coach.
And I will
And
say, max credit. My goodness. Talk
oh,
about the big A word we always like to use, adjustments, right?
yeah.
The man walks out to the mound. The very next pitch is exactly what it needs to be, and we're done with that inning. It's incredible. I hope that that maintains the whole season, but that gave me a lot of confidence right out the gate.
I mean, he speaks their language. You can tell. I
Yeah,
mean, that in and of itself should tell you all you need to know is, he goes out there and he's like, hey, whatever he's telling them, just quit screwing around and throw a strike. And so he quits throwing around, quit screwing around, throw a strike. And
yeah.
it happens.
Well,
And
and
so,
I particular saw it when I was at the game Saturday because we did get ourselves into a couple of pickles where we
yeah,
had the bases loaded. We had a couple of runners on. Maybe we were kind of falling off the wagon a little bit as far as focus. Little things pile up, and he immediately runs out there and says, "Yo, we're not giving up any runs here. We're not compromising. Get this guy out." And
yeah,
we've done that. You only give up one run on the weekend, and yeah, unearned. We haven't done that since
that's
the early,
bonkers.
I think, what was it, 93, 94 was the last time that we saw that happen. That's insane.
Well, I've seen conflicting reports on that because they're saying 94 and it was Pan Am, but then somebody said they looked it up in that Sunday game, the Pan Am, their score showed 8-7, not eight
Right.
zero.
So I
So
don't
like
know.
the actual baseball program probably needs to pull up their records and figure it out. But yeah,
Long
if it's
time ago.
94 or it's 1918, no matter how it is, I mean, both of those basically seem as far away as each other.
That's a long damn time ago. Very disconnected from the teams that are around today. So
Yes.
that's in the modern game of baseball, being able to keep a team down like that. And yeah, like I said, McNeese in previous seasons, I'm not applying that to them here, but in previous seasons have not been a slouch by any means. So
Right.
that's it. So that's a good sign. And I would like to see that continue. You'll have a midweek test with Incarnate Word. Granted, Tuesday games are goofy. We all know that.
Yeah, and that's another program that likes to jump up and bite the big programs.
And they've gotten us
But
a couple times.
but just the biggest takeaway for me over the weekend, it wasn't the offense. I knew the offense was going to be good. I didn't
Right.
know there was going to be 34 runs good, but
Fair.
I knew the offense was something that if you were going to worry about an aspect of this team, it wasn't that, Um, I think everybody's was, I don't know about concern, but I think everybody was really curious to see what the pitching was going to look like with the new coach, right? Because we've heard amazing things about him and all the analytics that he does and how he's able to really kind of get these kids, and kind of like we were saying, speaking his language, but he's also speaking their language.
Yeah.
And then they said it on the broadcast, and I thought it was interesting. He was in charge of the pitching for the Mariners, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's like 100 some odd pitchers. Like he wasn't just for the major league team. You were talking about at all levels. He was responsible for all the pitchers,
The
and now
system.
he's here and he only has to deal with what 20.
Yeah.
So it's his ability to be more hands on and focus
Yeah.
with these kids that are really at their peak level of development, as opposed to professionals who are you're tweaking development.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be special. I'm really looking forward to seeing signs. Is it no Cortez on? Excuse me, Cortez on Tuesday. He announced it.
I think that's the case.
I'm looking forward to because he has so much potential, and maybe hopefully Coach Weiner unlocks it, man.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. One additional thing I wanted to talk about, just because it was such a cool moment. I'm not sure if you caught this, but going over to the East Coast at East Carolina University, our friends, the
Oh,
Pirates.
yeah, the
Uh,
prosthetic leg, right?
yes, Parker Berg, who is he had his leg amputated after a boating accident 2 years ago. He just became the first person to play in a Division I baseball game with a prosthetic leg, came walking out the whole shebang. And I cannot think of a more perfect player to play for the Pirates, man.
Well, and that's such a great environment, and there's such
It
good baseball fans out there too. So
is.
that so that was just such a special moment.
It is a
Um,
special moment. And like I said, not making light of his situation at all, because I mean that's just an awesome thing.
it's an
Um,
amazing story.
and I'm not sure if you knew this. I went and did a little bit of digging on him this morning. He has a NIL deal with IHOP. I'm not even kidding.
That's absolutely perfect.
Hey, you know what? Own it, right? That
Yeah. Well, I
dude
mean,
owns it.
yeah.
And he
Yeah,
plays for a pirate. So there you go.
yeah, that was a really neat that was a really neat story actually. I saw that
It
I saw
is.
that pop across Twitter. But yeah, baseball's back, man. It's in full swing now. You know, it's and I get that it can kind of be well, I see it to me, it's not boring when you beat up on the little guy. Like you want to give me 34 runs next weekend, I'll take it. I'll take 45 runs next weekend. Um,
And we honestly should. God, that Wagner did not look good against North Carolina, but I don't think a lot of teams will look good against North Carolina. That's a good program.
yeah, yeah, no, there's some exciting baseball to be had this year. It's because tell you what, you better beat up on the little guys because as soon as you get in conference, there ain't no little guys in the SEC.
No, and everybody, you look at the opening weekend, and I mean, really the only team that even stumbled was Florida, but we didn't even get a chance to see them really
Yeah,
bounce back,
I mean, there were 4 teams in the top 10 that lost, but they only lost one. You know, Tennessee dropped one to OU.
Right, and
Uh,
that was a late game.
Florida, I think LSU lost one. I can't
Yeah,
remember. I had it up earlier.
Arkansas
And
lost a game.
Arkansas, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
to
So I mean, it
James
happens. It
Madison.
happens to the best teams in the nation.
Hmm.
Okay, but it's man, if you're not excited about both diamonds at A&M right now, like you just ain't paying attention.
And the environment is great at both spots. I mean, we had our biggest opening weekend at Olson in years in terms of crowd. I think it was over 18,000 over the course of the weekend, including
Yeah,
7,000 on Friday night, which that was awesome to see.
yeah, yeah. Tim England put that out there. It's the last 2 years it was 17 and change, and this year it was over 18. So it's just fantastic sport, and that includes Saturday where the weather was just crappy.
Yeah, it was a rough day, and it was a little slow as far as getting people in the stands. But yeah, by the time first pitch rolled around, they were definitely trying to throw people in on spots just because there was not enough room. People were just
Right.
excited to be out of baseball, regardless of the weather. So that's a great sign.
Yeah, it just refused to warm up on Saturday, and that's what's weird. When I got home, yeah, just like hovered around 43 all day. It was just really weird. And I drove to Nacogdoches and it was 41, so it got a little colder. But but I got back and I flipped it on and I saw kind of some spots, some spaces in the crowd, and I was like, you know what, I can't blame him. Like I'll get sick if I sit out in baseball, but and then my other thought was, it's coming off of Friday. It's a beautiful day on Friday, right?
Yeah, oh, yeah,
Beautiful. Coming off of Friday, you roll into Saturday and it's crappy weather. And honestly, crappy weather makes for some crappy baseball sometimes.
and it did for a
It's
while.
cold. You don't really like pitching. You don't like catching the ball. You hate making contact.
And when you foul one off your foot, it hurts just a little extra. That happened to Jace, that kind of thing.
Everything hurts a little bit more. So, and that's another thing where, and I get that both teams are playing the elements. It's not an excuse for the performance by any means. And they did pull away. Let's not act like
No,
they
I mean,
eked out a 1-0 win.
anytime you can win by 5 runs, it's never a bad deal.
Yeah, but it was just kind of one of those where, also the better team mentally gets through those situations. I think,
Yeah,
you're able to just put it, put in the back of your mind that the weather sucks because it's not like other sports when you play. It's not like football where you can stay warm.
right.
Baseball is a very sedentary game, and, unless you're pitching.
Yeah,
Um, you're pitching and catching. That's the only people that stay active, and so it's just tough when it's colder. It's tougher to play. That's all there is to it.
sure.
And and so I thought I was really proud of how they responded later in the game. After they were able to wear down that pitcher, and then Sunday was again I caught the end of it because I had an open house, but Sunday was they're just a fun baseball team, man, and it looks like they have fun together. And so and Bronny mentioned this. The only thing you worry about is all that talent being able to make sure that it sees time on the field.
I agree. And you want to get that key time in. Fortunately, with these upcoming games and all these different lower tier opponents that are on the schedule, you have plenty of opportunity to get at least some good key experience.
Yes, you got UIW, you got Wagner. You have that invitational in the SIPs, but you got like I think Rhode Island or something like that. Yeah, so you got no, not Rhode Island, but you got plenty of non-conference opportunities. And not to mention, that's not just opportunities; it's also an opportunity for Sloss and in the entire staff to really fine tune what they're seeing and who's performing in certain spots. Man, Targo had a tough weekend. You
Yeah,
know,
he did.
does Targo sit on Tuesday? Maybe he does. Maybe you put Caden Kent out there.
Hey,
So it's do you give does Jackson Appel take Tuesdays off? Like, do you have the other two guys really kind of vying for the Tuesday? Because just playing catcher just wears on you, man. The whole season as a catcher is tough on your knees, tough on your body. So that's those are the decisions that you're fortunate with the non-conference stuff, like the kind of paycheck games and paycheck series.
yeah,
Um, is that they can really start to fine tune because you see what you see in practice and in fall, and you see it all, but it's different when they're playing against actual live competition that isn't also wearing maroon and white, right? And so
exactly.
that's where the staff, and that's where you have to be really excited as well.
Oh yeah,
We have a great staff, so you expect them to, they're pulling as much data out of those games as they're putting in.
right.
And so and that's where hopefully we also see that. And I've given the success, you have to admit that it's probably the same across the street at Davis.
Hmm.
you know I mean, they're 9-0 for a reason, man.
Yep.
If we were 7-2 and the only two games you lost to Oregon were to Oregon, you'd still be like, okay, but we beat some other teams. But you were able to beat a ranked team, so those are two ranked wins early. and
Yeah.
and on a quick turnaround. You beat them once, and sometimes it's harder to beat them the second time, right? And that's in every sport.
Yeah.
But you turn around and you just beat them again.
Yeah, and shut him out that second game. So
Yeah.
that's a great sign. One thing I will say before we kind of wrap up on baseball that I really liked was seeing Jim Schlossnagle on X later on talking about, hey, I'm not a big fan of all the empty seats behind home plate, and I'm more than happy to put students down there if you give me a chance to get those tickets.
Well, I love that he put out like, hey, if you have tickets and you can't make it, let's make sure we get them in the hands of Aggies. I love that he put it out
Yeah,
there, but then I also love on the back end, the end of the weekend, that he went back on and said, hey, 12th man, you guys were amazing. You were great. Thank you so much for all your support.
yeah,
He's not like who was it? Who gosh, Turgeon, Mark Turgeon.
yeah.
All
Mark,
he did was bitch about attendance. Like, and it gets to the point where you don't want to hear it because he bitch about attendance, and then we'd have a game where everybody shows up to read and he doesn't say anything on the back end.
right. You don't reinforce the positives in the situation, right? Like you
Right.
just complain.
You
And
just complain.
and nobody likes a complainer. So at the end of the day,
Yes, Schloss turns
reinforce.
around and thanks him. And
Yeah,
he's just a class act. He's a machine as a coach. It's so exciting. And I'm really I mean, I think this guy is the absolute limit for the baseball team. I think for softball, I I expect him to be in the tournament, no problem.
yeah. I mean, they've looked great so far, and they can win against top level competition. So
Mhm.
really like what we're seeing on both fronts, and excited to roll along with the Diamonds. No doubt about that.
Yeah, we've seen softball also. They've had. In fact, we saw Targo come out of the game on Sunday, right?
Yep.
After the sixth inning or seventh inning, and
Mhm.
so those are necessary moves, but you're tweaking your roster all the time throughout the season, the whole season.
Yep.
Whether it's because of injury or just because of performance. And when you look at the box scores, because softball went on TV over the weekend, which
Yep.
sucked. I don't understand how something isn't on TV at this point when it comes to sports. I just don't
Yeah, I
get it.
mean, some kind of streaming something,
Something,
So,
but you see, working with different lineups and working with different personnel, and so softball is doing the same thing that baseball is doing.
yep.
So like if you had to nitpick, uh, and you're not banging on Ryan Targas by any means. I mean,
No.
the talent that he has. It's just you want to see him get it going.
Yep.
Vestal, it's a transfer pitcher for softball. We'd like to see her kind of get it going.
Yeah.
So like if those are the two things, like
Yeah.
you're really having to nitpick.
Well, and it's obviously too early to pass judgment on either one of them. Yeah, you got to think
Right.
that Targach, maybe came out and had a rough weekend, and seeing generally how everybody else did. Okay, it's time to really kind of step it up. We got to refocus. All right, we got to get back into how things are supposed to be. I may not have a job if I don't. So
Yeah, and with as much talent as there is on that roster, I think everybody understands that. I mean, you got to perform, and nobody understands it probably better than he does. I mean,
no,
he's a fantastic dude.
it's like
He's a
people
uber competitor.
people complaining to players or coaches about not having the drive to want to win a game. It's like nobody wants to win a game more than they do. because
Yeah,
that's their job. That's what they're trying to do. Yeah, we as fans can sit here and nitpick and complain and argue and be like, come on, we need extra effort. We need more pride out of these guys. They have it in droves. They just sometimes it's just not there, you know?
yeah, that's not what they're missing by any means. And
No,
and still, it's a long way to go. It's one series, so you don't want to take too much out of it either.
no, you absolutely, absolutely don't. So
I'm really looking forward though. Um, I'm kind of looking forward to Globe Life.
yeah, love
I'm not going, but I'm kind of looking forward to those games. I mean, a little bit better competition, obviously, so that's good. I mean, obviously, looking forward to the Texas game, but that's a one-off. It's a one-off game. It doesn't define your season, win or lose.
and it's
Um,
significantly earlier in the year than we've done it in past several seasons because typically we've played them end of March, early April a lot of the time, and now
yeah,
we're kicking off in middle of basically spring break is March 5th.
well, I think that benefits us personally,
Doesn't hurt.
because just what you see from the Texas message boards, at the baseball message boards. Uh, they may not be in for a great year. Now, granted, that may be them, jumping off a cliff too early, but it sounds like they do have some issues, and they lost enough to where it's an issue. Um, but and I know it'll get here. I get it, but man, that first conference series at Florida, that is just going to be like dynamite television.
It's going to be good television. That's a very good Florida team. I think obviously we didn't get a chance to really see what they were about this weekend. I pray we get a better shot at them this week. But yeah, I mean, critical games coming up, and you look across the board. Look at a team like Sam Houston. Sam Houston came out with their hair on fire, and that's a Tuesday game. That'll be a tough matchup. So
Yeah,
I mean, across the board, you're gonna have tough series. Auburn's gonna look good. State, yeah, they kind of struggled a little bit with Air Force at times, but they're gonna be fine. South Carolina at South Carolina, and they have looked damn good. So there's a lot of good teams on our
oh yeah. I mean,
on the
it's
docket.
SEC baseball, man. It's just
Yeah,
bonkers.
bonkers.
Just and this is one thing I'll say. Never never take too much away from teams struggling with the service academies in baseball,
Right.
because believe it or not, all three service academies generally put up pretty good products.
And they have in the past. And we've played Army, right? We haven't I'm, I think we played Air Force at some point. I just can't remember when. But yeah, they're not slouches most
No,
years.
no, the service academies generally put together good baseball teams. So even if it's top, one of the top schools has an issue with them, trust me, it's generally, and it's not every year, and I get that, but generally, service academies have pretty good baseball teams. Army's pretty good. Like Army's put together a program, which I mean, it's difficult to do because you can't recruit like everybody else. You just
Yeah.
can't. Air Force has a little bit easier go of it, um, but yeah, so that's not one where I would even consider that an issue.
No,
Um, but it's man, SEC baseball so good again this year. It's going to be so much fun.
it's going to
Hopefully,
be a
we
lot
don't
of fun.
just hopefully we don't do a round robin of just eating our own.
Well, and like I said, the beauty of where we stand this year and how good we've looked right out the gate is people are going to be looking at us, and they're going to be a little worried looking at that because they're going to be like, "Oh man, that's heavy. That's some good bats, and that's some damn good pitching."
Yeah,
So
it's
if we
turning
can
the tables,
maintain that,
man.
yeah, it's kind of nice, being on the other side of the coin there because most years, people are looking up at Arkansas, LSU, and yeah, they're looking up at them again. They're both going to be phenomenal teams, but we're right there in the mix with the rest of them. And yeah,
Yeah, now basically we just get added to the pile.
yeah, really.
Yeah, I mean it's going to be so much fun.
Oh, I'm excited.
I will say that I haven't paid much attention to softball outside of A&M, so that's something that I need to do a little bit more of. I'm probably going to dig into it a little bit this week. So we talk next week. We can actually kind of start talking a little bit more, leaning forward into the schedule with conference, and who we think is going to dominate, and who's where maybe we think we could end up in the conference. But from what I've seen so far, I'm very confident with softball as well.
Yeah, so exciting times on the sports front. We are looking forward to more baseball and softball as we continue to roll along.
And praying for great weather so we can keep, so we don't miss any games like Florida had to. What a bummer, man. You get all hyped up for opening weekend, you get one game out of it and you lose it.
Right. So, and the forecast looking particularly nice for this upcoming weekend. So another great weekend for Aggie
What's Tuesday
baseball.
looking like? You're the weather guy.
Tuesday didn't look bad, honestly. This whole week it's supposed to be pretty pleasant with increasing temperatures. Heck, we might hit 70s by Tuesday, so we're talking very pleasant weather over the next several days.
You are speaking my
Potentially
language.
80 on Thursday, so it's
Oh, it's
it's
gonna feel like 130.
it's gonna feel miserable. It's gonna feel hot. But the nice part is we will have some very nice days of weather for the next several days. Should be perfectly fine for baseball and softball. Get the hell after those and go try
Gotta
to
love it. Gotta
gotta
love it.
love it. So what all do you have going on this week?
Man, I'll tell you what. I think I said this before. Yeah, January is generally a good month for our team, but like we have just been like our hair is on fire over at Bach Realty Group. We have been so busy, like, and we're blessed to be busy. Don't get me wrong. Like, I will never complain about being busy. I'll complain about not being busy.
Yes.
Um, so we've been super busy. The market has, it's stabilized enough in the fourth quarter last year to where people's mindsets have changed and they just kind of understand the new reality.
Yeah.
But from everything that I see, because I'm the analytic, nerd guy, from what I see, I very favorable outlook for this year, for the industry, as long as enough homes can get built just to work on implementing and growing the inventory, because it doesn't matter where the market's at. If the inventory sucks, it's just tough. But outside of that, my sister came in this past weekend. She flew in from Arkansas. I don't get to see her a lot. And so she flew into Houston because one of her classmates got promoted to 1 star. So she came in for the promotions ceremony.
Cool.
And they did it at a brewery, because if you're a 1 star, you get to do it wherever you want to, right?
That's awesome.
Um, but I was able to go down to Tomball, and we got to have a family dinner. Got to both my sister, both my sisters, and my parents. So it was great. It's a long day of driving, but it was great. And then just Sunday. Yesterday was a beautiful day.
Yeah.
I had to do a little bit of work, but for me, I'm just working. I've expanded my footprint. I'm up in Nacogdoches now.
Sure.
I down in the spring, like Montgomery, Magnolia, basically the whole corridor between here and kind of Spring Klein Tomball area. Like, I'm starting to work that whole corridor, and then we have a presence kind of in west of Houston, like the Katy Fulshear area.
Yeah.
So we're growing. Our team is growing. Our footprint is growing. So we're really looking forward to it. Like, we're at the point where we got to buy a lot more signs.
Sure.
That's good.
That's
That's a
never a
good
bad
thing.
sign. Never a bad sign.
So yeah, we're growing, and we're doing well, and the kiddos doing well in school, and it's just Megan's doing great. We're just plumbing along, man, and I think everybody always gets in a better mood when the weather's better.
You're not wrong.
So the only issue I'm having right now really is the freaking weeds in my yard.
Yeah, and I've got a few that we're waiting to see if freeze hits, but I'm looking forward to nuking those guys. And it doesn't help that when they built this house, this is for those of you who don't know where I'm living, I'm on the outside of 2018 and Bryan in that new um, Pleasant Pleasant Hill neighborhood.
Up near
And
Lake Bryanish.
yeah, and when they set up this ground, they did not properly sod the backyard, so those weeds are just popping. So I have to go and take care of those. But
Yes. As soon as we end this, I'm not passing go. I'm not collecting $200. I'm going directly to Tractor Supply.
that's a good start. So the way that my weekend kind of wrapped up, my past weekend was honestly one of the cooler experiences I've had a chance to do, and that was to finally go watch the Eagles live in concert.
Really? Where were
And
they? Were they down in
they
Houston?
they were down in Houston over at
Nice.
over there at Toyota Center. Me and my friend James, my parents, and some family friends, we all went, and they definitely know their audience at this stage of the game, but my goodness, they came out and just killed it. Joe Walsh still rips. I mean, Don Henley was as good as ever. I mean Vince Gill, one of the all-time greats. And having all three of those guys on the same stage and not just playing Eagle songs, but also doing originals, like Don Henley came up and sang Boys of Summer as a tribute to Jimmy Buffett, and you had Heartache Tonight to close out the night. Rocky Mountain Way, Life's Been Good by Joe Walsh. I mean, so many great songs, and they kicked it off with Seven Bridges Road, which
Uh,
just killed me. Oh, it was so good.
the best Eagle song ever, and I'll not hear an argument otherwise.
It's phenomenal, and the fact they opened up the show with that and Take It Easy. Those are the first two songs right out the
That
gate.
that's amazing that they're still ripping away at it, man. That's
They're so
unbelievable.
good.
That's
They're
cool.
so good. So we had a chance to go see the Eagles, and that was awesome. Steely Dan opened the show, and they were badass too. I mean, I've been looking forward to seeing Steely Dan for a long time, and they did not disappoint.
That is
But
it. That is kind of an unreal lineup, man.
It is. And people in my generation may not necessarily appreciate it, or younger even, but that's certainly two incredibly important rock bands in terms of history. And
That's
so
crazy.
getting the chance to watch both of them was incredible. Recording was awesome on Monday and Tuesday. We have two new songs getting ready to come out. Down the line, of course, but one's called Hard Times. It's kind of a fun song because it has a tempo change. We start off in a 3/4, but then we go to a 4/4, then go back to a 3/4 at the end. So it kind of shifts up the flow a bit.
As you just lost like 90% of the listeners.
That's okay. Learn something every once in a while. I'm educating. But and then wrapped up the last song that we did was a Comancheria. And this song in particular, I'm really looking forward to. And I'll explain
it
all the fun
it
details on that. Assuming we can lock it all in, that song's gonna be really cool for us.
it sounds amazing because I'm one of the cool kids on the inner circle. So
Yes. So you guys, of course, will all get a chance to hear it at some point. But yeah, once we actually have those songs really locked in, I'm looking forward to you guys getting to check them out, and we'll share them this Friday. Marlboro's at Midnight, which is our brand new single, will release. Well, technically at 11 p.m. on Thursday, but it will be available for everyone at that time all day Friday, along with the music video, which we were very proud of how it turned out. It really did come together really nicely. So be sure to stream that, share it, tell your friends about it. It's a great old school country style song that's well outside of the realm of what people typically associate with modern Texas country music. It's just a good country song. So if you like good belly rubbing, sad hour country boy music, I got a great song for you coming out this Friday. So get ready for that.
That's very accurate.
So we're excited for that. That's gonna be a lot of fun. But
Well, so get out to read, support the women tonight if you can. If you're local, get out to read, please. So it's not
absolutely
an LSU home crowd.
get out
Get
there.
out to Davis, get out to Olson or Bluebell. I guess they pay enough money. At some point, I should probably try and call it Bluebell every once in a while. Still
All those
Olson.
fun.
It'll always be Olson.
Exactly. I am Rod White. He is Roy May. We are the RedAss Podcast. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.